Body to the Premier and the Provincial Executive Council to achieve an inclusive growing economy, a sustainable environment, and a prosperous, healthy, and educated society in KwaZulu-Natal. Dudu Nsomi.
Do I have a clicker? Good morning. How are you? Yeah, rather not see my image. Which way? Perfect. So, and back is back. Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for hosting me. It is a privilege. It's my first time, the Pearl of Africa, and I was not going to miss the opportunity. I decided to term it Beyond Sustainability and Strategic Choices That Matter, and you'll appreciate, hopefully, why that is. At first, I thought, people are going to say, why was she invited? She's not even a specialist in sustainability. And by a miracle, on Saturday, a former client sent me this WhatsApp. And I said, Dudu, stop stressing. This is the reason. Do what you do best. It really helps, it warms the heart when people communicate with you and tell you the impact. I may not have the same impact because we have such a short time together, but hopefully the way I have organized my thoughts, it's going to touch the heart, and it is an opportunity for us to look at ourselves in the mirror. The SDGs are there, all the theories is there. The question is why we're not moving forward. So it's going to be a personal relationship with yourself today. So this is how I would like to organize the sharing today. First, just cover the context, the leadership's role, and my work is in leadership, strategy, and governance, so I can only do what I do best in terms of organizing my thought process, strategic decisions, and governance. There is just so much one can cover, so I really hope I've just chosen a few that will hopefully help us reflect. So, what is the context? We've seen an evolution in terms of the terms that have been used, but ultimately what we're trying to do is balance the common good and the self-interest. And the terms have evolved over time to reflect our values, but ultimately this is what we're all trying to do. Yeah? So, people have also been quite confused. We were talking SDGs, now we're talking ESGs. It's all interacted, it's all related, no panic, yeah? So, sustainability, it's more than a buzzword, yeah? We can appreciate that. Maybe I should have had a lapel or something, because I do tend to enjoy moving around. It is a multifaceted and ever-changing opportunity because they reflect the values of society. Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you. Ultimately, sustainability, it's about smart business. Yeah? It's about smart business. It's about meeting the human need without overreaching the ecological constraints. But as our MD said at the beginning, ultimately what we're trying to do is have this ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising, because these finite resources are finite. This is why we call them finite. So we have to find strategies that will help us to achieve the things that we do, but without overreaching. Lest we forget, it is the mind that decides what resources are valuable. It's also going to be the mind that will decide that we will find alternative resources to achieve exactly the same things. Because sometimes I think we take it for granted that, I don't know, what's your favorite thing to do? Like juice always comes from a particular fruit? Or, I don't know, in 20 years' time, we may find different ways of doing stuff. So let's just remember our agency in the whole thing. So in terms of just organizing, what SDGs have done, they've provided the shared language that we can all report on. They have given us a universal call to action with goals and targets, and there are 17 of them. And the significance is that it includes individuals and countries. On the other hand, if you look at ESGs, it organizes the very same SDGs into 3 categories. And it offers methods and processes, and it's primarily used by the business community and companies. But it's all one. So it's not different languages. We're not trying to achieve different things. It is just organizing information so that it can be easier to execute. What's important is the harmonization and the synchronization of the ESGs in order to expedite the contributions that the SDGs try to do. And these are some of just the examples of what you try and measure under each factor or category. Just to see our progress so far, South Africa in the last year has fallen. We're not doing very well, at 108 out of 163 countries. In terms of Uganda, at least Uganda has 2 greens. South Africa doesn't even have any greens, yeah? Which means that we are going backwards instead of forwards. But still, not good enough. It's on 136. So why do we have a problem? We know what we need to do. Why don't we do what we need to do? The reality is that transformation is on a continuum, yeah? You can start here. You are satisfied the way business is. You want to continue as business as usual, and it's not my responsibility, Profits and bonuses at any cost. You can move to seeing the problem, but not knowledgeable about how to build a business case. You can be motivated, which we hopefully, a lot of us in this room are. We have been looking at the cost benefits and are overcoming all the barriers that we put in our ways around whether something is an investment or its value. You could already be in the solution mindset. Culture just needs to take root. You are now piloting and you're seeing the positives that are happening from the decisions. Or you are already in the innovation stage where you're already seeing the benefit of being purpose-led. A lot of companies are now using the purpose-led as part of their vision. And hopefully all of us can be in that area in the short term rather than long term. Where is our problem? Our problem is our belief system. Our problem is the belief system because our belief system influence our attitudes influence our actions, and that's the results we get. Why South Africa is on 108 and Uganda is on 136. Mahatma Gandhi said it very well. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. But what's significant about leadership, it's not just your destiny. You are impacting the destinies of others, which is why the evolution of us as leaders is most important when it comes to sustainability. So the invitation is really to have a paradigm shift. Being green and being good. I usually use this diagram when I'm teaching corporate governance, and I think it's just relevant as well when we're talking sustainability. Ultimately, we are trying to get us to be enlightened, self-interested individuals. It is no good self-sacrificing, especially when it comes to business, yeah? And it's not good just to be what's in it for me. And a lot of businesses have been that for centuries. What we're trying to go for is enlightened self-interest, where you keep in mind the interests that your interests are best served when you look after the interests of others. South Africa just had the riots last year. No high walls are going to protect you when the hungry are out in the streets and looting. And that is so strong in telling us that we have to adopt the paradigm of enlightened self-interest. So in terms of leadership, what's the leadership role in this conversation? Having worked in the leadership space for a while, I devised my own definition of what leadership is. And it does not mean position. Leadership is never about position, but it just so happens that sometimes it goes hand in hand. What leadership is the ability to direct, to shape, and influence into the future a new and unknown reality. We have no idea what a world will be like when we all live sustainability values. But it will definitely be better than what we're experiencing now. So that's what leadership is. But it just so happens that I am talking to people who also have positional leaders. And sustainability requires a commitment from boards, from CEOs, the executive layer. It requires the unlearning. That's most important. And the learning of new ways of leading to consider the quality of profits. Because it's okay to have profits, but now let us ask ourselves of the quality of profits in the profit maximization and the impact of society and the environment. It is important that leaders have a mindset change. SDGs represent an increasing in bottom line. And that is a mindset change because when people think of developmental outcomes, they think of costs. But indeed, it is about the creation of new bottom lines, value creation, new business models, new value models, new markets, new business opportunity. So it's not just about costs. It is very much about value. Leaders need to embrace a paradigm shift from internalizing profits and externalizing costs. This attitude definitely is the one that also impacts people from being anti-capitalism because everybody bears the cost, but it's a small number that enjoys the profit. Leaders also need to seek and build partnerships. PPPs are something that we all talk about. But the focus should be on saving the golden egg through innovations, not lobbying against things that will help the broader good. So what we tend to do most of the time as business leaders is to lobby for interests that will look after a small minority, so such as deregulation. PPPs should be for the benefit of everybody. Take leadership and use the authority of the C-suite and the boardroom. First, to define the sustainability vision. Many of us still need to do this step. Yeah? Build a business case, define what are the decisions that need to be made, and that's where the strategy comes from. Looking at the entire value chain and make them part of the culture. Nothing helps build a culture like hitting the pocket. If you do not align it to the KPIs and bonuses, none of these things are going to happen. Work with suppliers and customers, look at your supply chain, and ensure the responsible use and disposal of your products and services. And most importantly is also to communicate. It seems like the slide has been cut here, but communicate with your community and stakeholders to find out to them, what do they think being a good corporate citizen is? Sometimes we don't do that. We assume we know, but it will always be good just to check with your community. In terms of strategic decisions, COVID-19 really did show us how we have the ability to adapt and innovate if we are required to. But also it showed us what happens when we are not polluting and damaging the environment. We actually started seeing animals that we hadn't been seeing for a while. The air was clean. Maybe there's a hint there. We should have a week of not moving. Everybody should be on lockdown.
That should be part of the, yeah, I know. I think that's one of the things we should do as the world. 1 week, no movement. Anyway, but the one thing that African businesses really have an opportunity to do is to leapfrog. We don't have to go through the trajectory of developed countries. We can leapfrog. Mobile telephony has shown us that. When it comes to sustainability, we can do the same. There are many opportunities, new markets that we can be pursuing instead of thinking, oh, well, the West got its energy from coal, we need to do the same. There are just so many ways we can be more creative. Strategy and development needs to incorporate environmental considerations as a matter of course. It should not be a siloed decision. This way of compartmentalizing our decision making is just not good. It should all be integrated. Ultimately, the real driver of sustainability is gaining competitive and comparative edge. At the moment, I think Cambodia and Bangladesh globally are the only ones that are making great progress when it gets to SDGs. And when you're looking at investing opportunities, you start looking at things like that. So it's not just about your own market, but when you're looking at economies in emerging markets, you need to stay competitive and comparative so that finances can flow into the country. But also, just because consumers are not driving this change doesn't mean we need to be complacent, because when they do catch up, they will be voting with their money. Yeah? So we need to be proactive rather than reactive. And finally, there is an opportunity to use your corporate brand, to use that as a vehicle for change and to get markets, stakeholders to mobilize towards achieving their SDGs, because you can reward and penalize. For example, when you go to a Woolworths, our favorite retail, and you don't come with your recycled package, you have to pay for plastic. And most of us don't like paying for anything. Yeah? So when you come with your package all the time, you're saving the environment and you're not going to be penalized by paying for something. So in every business, there are opportunities to reward and penalize customers. In a VUCA world, we know that it's important to integrate sustainability into the corporate DNA. Again, I emphasize, without KPIs and without incentives, nothing changes. What is measured and what is rewarded is what is done. So that's very important in getting this progress going. Technological advances, we know that, especially in mining, coming from a country of mining, they cause a lot of damage. Technological advances can cause damage, but they can also help reverse the situation. So in terms of our strategic decisions, it's about identifying the correct technologies to help organizations to achieve sustainability by disrupting traditional business models. M-Pesa is a good one for that, which also results in financial inclusion. Addressing the environmental impacts of technology itself as a resource depletion itself. Resources are consumed faster than they are replenished. Measuring and monitoring impacts. That's a very important one. I think now we're in the era of impact economies, really measuring how the things that we are doing are impacting. So things around net zero, the green software practices to reduce energy consumption, blockchains to increase transparency and building systems. And in every sector, there will be different examples. Yeah. In terms of governance responsibilities, so sustainability is not just about the environment, it's also about the resilience of organizations. We always, when we're teaching strategy, talk about Nokia. I think most people even forget that Nokia was in the cell phone business. But it started off as a lumber company. and it missed its advantage when it got to smartphones. That's what sustainability also means, yeah? And it encourages the long-term focus. So risk management and sustainability effort works synergistically in the interest of the company. Just referring to the Companies Act of Uganda, if you look at 198, it says that the duties of directors is to act in a manner that promotes the success. Yeah? It doesn't say it promotes the success for 10 years. It's sustainable success. And exercise a degree of skill and care as a reasonable person will do for their own business. So what's important, especially at board level and executive suite level, don't be caught on the back foot. With the increasing consciousness of stakeholders within and outside borders, you will be found wanting. In the US, as an example, ESG-related litigation is becoming quite a big thing. The other thing to be wary of as part of your governance responsibility is greenwashing. When companies spend more time on the marketing, there are some things you really can't create gimmicks out of. At the moment, I think Coca-Cola just got into trouble in terms of how they approached the plastic bottle situation. They were accused of greenwashing. And you can look at many examples. This already reinforces the idea that even at executive level, you have to work as a team. All these different disciplines that work in silos, it's not going to work, because if marketing is doing something else, operations is doing something else, somebody else is doing something else, you are giving conflicting images in the market, and it's going to get you into trouble. The other thing that's a powerful tool towards sustainability is integrated reporting. And now people are really reading integrated reports like it is a novel. They're really enjoying and they highlight. So it's a powerful tool to understand the relationship between financial and non-financial. And retail and institutional investors are really looking at ESG factors to influence their investment decisions. What's always important in the context of governance is the agency theory. As management, we always have to guard against self-interest, because some of the reasons why we know what we need to do, but we're not doing, is because we are protecting our own self-interest. And that, as you know, is called the agency theory. And lastly, the empathy of the civic society in many countries is not a license for business leaders not to be active. If you know better, you should do better. And my question to you is, are we the generation that chooses not to sacrifice for the next generation, even for millions in our own generation? Are we the generation that has sacrificed, that has chosen to sacrifice the next generation for the future? Their future, we're trading it in. I mean, it's very difficult when you think of, as a parent, when you look at your children, do you want your children to have a worse off life than you? And that's exactly what we're talking about. The decision that needs to be made is look at yourself in the mirror and you will know exactly what to do. In conclusion, I love this one. As human beings, our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world, but in being able to remake ourselves. And that is the challenge that I am sending to you. Thank you. Rush through that quick enough.
Thank you very much for that. Another round of applause, guys. I think we can clearly see that when we're talking about sustainability, this is a conversation we can never, ever think about avoiding. It's very interesting that in many conversations around businesses, especially the businesses I work with, profit is the most important aspect, but I think now sustainability is actually coming ahead of that. Our next speaker is going to be Arimi Barbara. Arimi Barbara Egunyu is the head of marketing and communications at NSSF, and she is a DFCU group board member, CEO apprenticeship board member, ACIM, MCIPR, MBA, top MBA student, and BCOM. She's a seasoned marketing professional with 18 years experience in marketing of financial services, of which 16 have been at the middle and top management. She has experience in retail sales, marketing strategy, communication strategy, product development and research, public relations, CSR, brand management, events management, and stakeholder management. Barbara Arimi.
Was that me? Okay, all protocol observed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest of honor, it's a pleasure to have you today. Our UN resident coordinator, it's a pleasure to have you. CEO Secretariat, and all the people in this room. I know this room is really heavily packed today in terms of IQ, titles, so I greet you this morning. I'm not used to, can I just get some guidance on? It's not moving. Can I just get a brief on how this works? Thank you. It's, they can do it from. Okay, I honestly, I have to wait for the presentation. I was told it's still downloading. I know a few people who love to tell stories, as an icebreaker, but I think I'm not gifted in that way. So I'll not try to crack a joke. So just give me 1 minute and then we'll start when the presentation is ready. I'm representing our Deputy Managing Director. He wanted to be here, but he had to attend to a board meeting, and he just couldn't delegate that because he was chairing the meeting. So I'll do my best to expound ESG in our organization. That sits within our docket, really, marketing and communications and corporate affairs. So I'll be glad to share, to talk about what I'm used to on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. Okay. Okay, while we wait for the presentation, I will start off and then we follow once it's uploaded. So today I'm going to talk about the role of ecosystems on sustainable development within the context of NSSF. So I'll basically focus, my presentation is broken down into 4 sections. The first, of course, definitions and understanding. Most of the times, actually, we do these things on a daily basis, but we just don't realize that actually this is what we are doing. So the terms keep evolving, CSR, ESG, you know, but it is really, when you look deep into your organization, you actually realize that you're actually delivering on the ESG, on the SDGs. And I think that is the big conversation today. So I'll talk about the definitions, our context, and then ecosystems that we have built around initiatives, and what I think the role of these ecosystems have been in terms of helping us to deliver our initiatives. So, what is an ecosystem? I must say that when I first looked it up, it fitted better in the geographical definitions. You know, animals, plants, birds, and a budding environment. But also, from a business point of view, it's a purposeful business arrangement between 2 or more entities. So, and why do these organizations come together? To create collective value. Yeah? And I'll be touching about how we've come together with some entities to create collective value. And of course, sustainability, as our keynote speaker mentioned, how do we meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs? So that is really an aspect around sustainability. And this has continued to develop and shifted slightly into more economic terms, social development, and also, of course, looking at the environment. And of course, in 2015, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Sustainable Development Goals that we have been talking about today, that the UN Resident Coordinator talked about, that Stephen also mentioned, the 17 goals that actually would mean sustainability from a development point of view. So what is our context in terms of NSSF? How many members are in the room? NSSF members? Oh, by show of hands. Okay, so there's still some work to do on our side, because I saw about 30% of the hands go up. But NSSF is a multi-trillion fund mandated by government through the NSSF Act, CAP 22, and also the NSSF Amendment Act 2022 to provide social security services to employees in the private sector. With an asset size of 17.93 trillion, that makes us the largest fund in East Africa by value. So our core mandate really is around social security. And of course, that would automatically feed within SDG 1, which is poverty reduction. Now, when we look at the fund at a glance, of course, over 86,000 registered employers, staff satisfaction at 92%, customer satisfaction 82%, and then 17.93 trillion in terms of total assets. Of course, this is what we measure on almost a daily basis because it feeds into our broad strategy of 20 trillion one-day turnaround time, 95% customer satisfaction, and 95% staff satisfaction as well. The presentation is behaving now. Thank you. If you can go to slide to 2.2. So, what is our contribution as a fund to the SDGs? I've already said our core is SDG 1. Why? Because we must invest your contribution and we must ensure we preserve it and give you a good return. That is our core. So that is no poverty. And so we also look at SDG 4 for the other interventions that we have done, where there's quality education through our initiatives, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and of course, partnerships, which is very critical for us. So what has our approach been to ESG? Of course, many people have talked about where CSR started from, donations. Donating, but that has evolved because it is not sustainable. It's usually a one-off and there is no impact and you cannot actually measure what you ultimately achieved beyond that donation. So the fund's focuses more on partnerships with credible institutions, good corporate governance and being a good corporate citizen. And the core areas of focus have been youth, education, health, and disadvantaged groups. So when we look at the core of the presentation, which is the role of ecosystems in sustainable development within our context, and I must admit when I saw this topic, it sounds like a thesis for a PhD or master's, ecosystems development. But within our context, I think let's just break it down very simply. What does it mean for NSSF to actually say we are working within the ecosystems that we have created to create sustainable development in the communities that we operate in? So I'll touch on 3 initiatives that the fund has actually been running with over the last years. The first one is the NSSF High Innovator Program. The second one is the NSSF Seven Hills Run, and the third one is the NSSF Career Expo. So the High Innovator Program started in 2021, although we had been piloting from around 2020, in partnership with MasterCard Foundation and being implemented by Outbox. Outbox is an incubation center. So what was the objective? The objective was to create an ecosystem where small and growing businesses by Ugandan entrepreneurs can be supported to mature into viable businesses. And most of us know, of course, that small businesses usually don't. Oftentimes, they would hardly qualify for seed funding and even credit, because when you look through the credit ratings for many organizations, they will ask for assets and things, and most of these small enterprises do not have that. So how was this partnership coming together to create a difference? Through providing seed funding and entrepreneurial skill training. Those are the 2 core things that this ecosystem is really focused on. And who are the partners within the ecosystem? We have NSSF, of course, and MasterCard. Those are the 2 partners. Together we have mobilized $10 million for a start, and that is between 35 to 38 billion shillings towards this initiative. And we also have Outbox. If we can go to the next slide, please. We have Outbox. Outbox is the lead implementation partner. And of course, we also have the curriculum and selection partners, where you have Atesa Business Advisory and Makerere University Business School. These are the people who have created the content. And then we have partners who are a panel of investors, people who with expertise in business and with expertise in investment, who can actually tell that this is a good business idea, this is an idea that is going to fail within the first 1 month or so. So when you look at this is an ecosystem. The fund, MasterCard Foundation, together with implementers within the incubation space, and of course, other individuals who really have their skills coming together with the main objective of ensuring that we support small and medium enterprises. Now, what does NSSF and MasterCard do? Of course, provide funding. We also host the academy, because when you go to our website, you'll find the High Innovator Business Academy, which is open to any entrepreneur in the country. And of course, NSSF focuses on its competences, one of which is to, of course, participate in the selection of companies. Why? Because we have a very agile investment team. And we also develop the communication and execute the communication strategy. And then MasterCard also participates along the journey. Okay. And then Outbox, of course, supports every business person who comes needs a hand. They need to be supported to build their idea until their idea becomes a real big, thriving business. And of course, what is the intention of this ecosystem? Train over 75,000 entrepreneurs, provide seed funding to 500 budding businesses, create 132,000 jobs over 5 years, and ultimately those will be NSSF members, because one of the things that you need to do is you should have registered with URA, URSB, and also NSSF. So it's a way of formalizing the informal sector as well. This initiative feeds into SDG 1, which is poverty reduction, and also industry, innovation, and infrastructure. What have we seen so far in terms of the impact through working with these partnerships and the ecosystem? We've been able to create 20,000 jobs. 10,000 entrepreneurs have been skilled through the Business Academy. We have provided seed funding to 32 companies, and 78 of them are undergoing due diligence, but they've qualified for seed funding. Total amount disbursed so far is 10.5 billion. And of course, we've been supporting these people through the business hubs. So that has been the impact that we have seen through that ecosystem of the High Innovator. The Business Academy, and then the financing, working with small and medium enterprises. The second idea is around education. I'll spend 2 minutes on this. It's our intervention in the space of education, and of course we know that this also feeds into the SDG goal. The ecosystem that we have created around this, funding partners, implementing partners where you work with the local government, the schools, and the basically, of course, people in construction, and then content development. What are we doing? It's a very simple initiative. We are actually running for education. So what we do, we fundraise, and we also give additional funding, and then partners also come on board. Our intention is to refurbish schools, provide sanitation, and also improve digital literacy in schools. From the SDG report that was published this year, we can see that actually 24 million learners pre-primary may never return to school because of the pandemic. We also see that inequities in learning worsened during the pandemic. And this we could see very well even within the communities that we live in. The people who are in poorer communities could not afford to get online because you need a tab, you need a laptop. And so some of these initiatives will help drive that source of further impact of this ecosystem that we've created, working, of course, with the Curriculum Development Center, working with the schools, primary and secondary schools, working with government, has had this impact. So far, 13 primary schools have been renovated, 72 classrooms, over 12,000 pupils. Sanitation has been improved. And we also piloted with 21 schools on the e-class digital literacy. And we are planning to scale this up in partnership with 3 corporate entities. That would be, the talks are still ongoing, but it's going to be bigger in terms of digital literacy in schools. So what I have seen is that actually it's very possible for you to focus on sustainable development and also achieve your business goals. Because you can see that actually from the first initiative, we definitely will create jobs, but all those will become members of NSSF. We also see that through Career Expo, which is the third initiative I wanted to talk about, we've also had over 200,000 students educated in terms of preparing them for life after campus. However, 81,000 are now members of NSSF, and when we track their contributions, over 44 billion has been realized from their contributions, because people finish, they register with NSSF, and then they start contributing at least after like maybe 3 years. So it is really very possible to link your goals, sustainable development, and still create an impact on the organization. Thank you. I don't know if I have a minute because I didn't talk about the role of ecosystems. Okay, thank you. So in terms of, and thanks for the hand clap, that was midway. So in terms of ecosystems, what is the role of ecosystems? First of all, it helps you to pull together your resources. If NSSF was going it alone for High Innovator, would have to first of all create the content, that means hiring more people. Would have to raise more money, but for now we've raised $5 million. We would have to really skill staff and create a new structure to deliver that. But because of the ecosystem that we've created, each partner is bringing their key competences to the table. You find that you can achieve faster. The second thing, of course, scale economies, because you might have a network of perhaps 19 branches, but with the partners, they have a broader network. And so you're able to tap into a broader, basically, target group. And then also your image goes up as you continue associating with other partners. For example, when NSSF with a big brand associates with an international brand like Ericsson, I saw the MD of Ericsson in the room, then you find that at a global level, our image also goes up. Of course, we are strong locally, but we might not be known globally. So ecosystems help us also to achieve on that. And of course, it increases our bargaining power. If we go to government and say this is what we are doing in the space of education, and we are doing it, we are 10 corporate entities doing this, you find that our bargaining power for policies goes up and we can be able to have a bigger influence. So that is it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Another round of applause for Barbara. Ecosystems. And what Barbara also forgot to talk about in the High Innovator is that the Stanbic Incubator has the highest number of successful entrepreneurs. I think that is a pat on the shoulder of the great work we're trying to do with you. We are now going into a very interesting session, and this is going to be a panel conversation. And here we'll be discussing the private sector views on integrating sustainability in business operations and stimulating SDGs or SDG investments. The chair for this session, or the moderator, is going to be Mr. Andrew Kabera, who is the Executive Director of Postbank Uganda. Now, allow me to make the introductions, and as I make the introductions, please come onto the stage so we can catch up with time. Mr. Andrew Kabera is the Executive Director of Postbank Uganda Limited. He's a seasoned banker with over 15 years' experience working in Uganda's financial services sector. He has an extensive technical knowledge of products, acquisitions, systems, and digitization. Coupled with a lot of progressive experiences in business development and strategy, he has a very great experience in the area of risk management, operations, operational excellence, and he has excellent leadership skills for large and diverse human resource capital. Andrew Kavera. On his panel, we will have Dr. Albert Mugisha. Albert Biamugisha, sorry. We will have Dr. Albert Biamugisha. Dr. Albert Biamugisha is currently working as a senior technical advisor and head of the SDG Secretariat at the Office of the Prime Minister. He's responsible for steering the coordination function and supporting the oversight in the implementation of SDG's coordination framework in Uganda. Dr. Biamugisha is also the chairman of the National Governance Council for African Peer Review Mechanism and also chairman of the board of directors of the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, UBOS, among others. Doctor, you're welcome. The other person on the panel is Gerald Muhereza. Gerald Muhereza is currently the Deputy Director and the Head of Corporate Banking at NCBA Bank. Gerald has over 24 years of work experience, having started his career at Ernst & Young, Uganda office, where he worked for over 5 years. He worked as part of the audit and accountancy services team prior to joining the banking industry. He has over 19 years experience in the banking sector, having served in several capacities as Senior Relationship Manager, Senior Business Analyst at DFCU Bank, Head of Local Corporates, Head of Corporate Banking at Orient Bank, General Manager, Credit and Equity Bank Uganda Limited, Executive Director at Yuga Ford Microfinance Limited, and Executive Director and Head of Business at Commercial Bank of Uganda Limited. He is currently the Deputy Director, Head Corporate and Corporate Banking at NCBA Bank. The other person on the panel is Dr. Stephen Asimwe. I think this is a name that we all know, a name that is very interesting. Okay, thanks for the correction. So we will be having Grace Shemerere Gwaku. Grace is an executive leader with a demonstrated history of delivering strong results and 20 years experience in the private sector. She currently works with the Private Sector Foundation, where she is the current Chief Operating Officer at PSFU, and she's responsible for overseeing the design and implementation of business strategies, plans, and procedures. She's responsible for establishing policies that promote Private Sector Foundation of Uganda culture and vision. She also has been the regional head, or she was the regional head of marketing for the International Premium Spirits at EABL, and this was with Diageo and East African Breweries Limited. She's worked with the Guinness Global Brand team in London, United Kingdom, where she managed brands like Guinness, Malta, Guinness, and of course, Diageo's African jewels across the African continent. She's a graduate of Makerere University and has an MBA from the University of Leicester, Leicester, United Kingdom. Grace Gwaku. And finally, on the panel, all right, and finally we have our last panelist, who is Andrew Kilonzo. Andrew is a business executive with over 25 years of experience in the retail energy, beverage, and entertainment industries. He's passionate about building talent, leading through service, and growing communities. He has held several executive roles across Diageo, and an opportunity forged from years being into business sales, commercial operations, and execution, and leadership. He's accumulated years of experience both in the beverage industry and as well as the retail oil industry. He kicked off his leadership journey in earnest. His most recent posting was Managing Director of Diageo Business in Ethiopia. Welcome, Andrew, and over to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Tony. And all protocols observed, I'm happy to be here as the chair of this panelist that we have here. I'm going to start off by giving a small story, 1 minute. When the Honorable was here, I was talking about that we have 7 years to go. Then I remembered my uncle. He used to like alcohol a lot. The good thing I have my namesake from UBA, so he was a customer. So this guy was also called Andrew. So what happened is that he went to work late. And then they asked him, Andrew, why are you late? He had drunk the whole night and said, boss, better late than never. And when I was thinking about the 7 years we have to 2030, I can only say that better late than what? Than never. We have very little time, but at least we are here, not that we are drunk. Today, when we talk about sustainability in the corporate world, so many things are talked about. I would say buzzwords. We've talked about things like, when we're in the boardroom, things like future-proofing. You can talk about future-ready. All these terms, to me, they are talking to sustainability. Only that we are not being deliberate and intentional to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. There is also one thing that we need to think about as private sector. We can never have billionaires in slums. If we really do, most likely it's a hoax or it's a lie. You can imagine a bungalow in amidst a slum. Chances are high that you can't survive. And I'm happy that when you talk about the SDGs, we are talking also about such things, getting our people out of poverty, among so many other things. So, as we say, we've made a lot of money as corporates. I think we need to know that we shouldn't be billionaires in what? In slums. With that, our panelists, our theme today, we are talking about integrating sustainability in business operations and stimulating sustainable development goals. I want us to talk about a few things, and maybe at times I think ladies first. It's also part of sustainability. So I'll start with you, Grace. When you think about sustainability as PSFU, are you currently changing your strategy to align with environmental sustainability? How does your organization move toward this sustainable solution when there are more financially viable alternatives? Over to you, Grace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kavera. My name is Grace Shemere Gwaku, and I'm excited to be here. Really excited that we're talking about sustainability in the private sector. For those of you that don't know about Private Sector Foundation Uganda, we are the apex body of the private sector, comprising of about 311 associations, and we exist to champion private sector development by advocating for an enabling environment. So I'm representing my CEO, who is actually traveled to the US to attend an anti-corruption conference. What would be more appropriate than today's agenda? We are refreshing our strategy, as I'm sure many organizations have done in Uganda, post-COVID, because of the realities coming out of the epidemic. But I think what's worth mentioning is that we're not just looking at the environment, we're looking at everything. We're looking at the social inclusivity, we are looking at governance, and of course the environment is part of it. Why is this important to us? I think Dr. Robin Chibuk actually used my line when he said that gone are the days when entrepreneurs go to a bank and borrow money just to, generate revenue, deliver profits, manage their costs, and a very attractive bottom line. Those days are past. In the immediate future and tomorrow's entrepreneurs, we must think about integrating the environment. We must integrate the social inclusivity. We must integrate governance in every business idea, because there's no business right now anywhere in the world that does not interact with any of the SDGs. None whatsoever. Which brings me to a very interesting statistic. During the financial year 2019-2020, disasters were reported in over 70 districts of Uganda, affecting 800,000 people, displacing 21,000 families. This resulted in an economic loss of 560 billion Uganda shillings. Now, we can do everything we're doing to grow the economy, but when you have what Stephen called economic derailers or detractors, then even your economic growth is being set back by 560 billion Uganda shillings. These were all factors related to climatic changes. We cannot continue like this. It will be a frustrating effort as we aim to achieve our middle income status. So what are we as private sector doing about this? Now, private sector implements private sector-led initiatives on behalf of the government and works closely with development partners to implement private sector-led interventions. So because we are compliant with the law, we do not have a choice. We have to be sustainable. We have to be compliant. And therefore that means that, and I read in one of the books where Mr. Chimbo said, sustainability needs to be the oxygen of the organization. I completely buy into that statement because it's the way of life. If we are looking at people, planet, and profit, that has to be the way of life. And though, I must say it's challenging for the Ugandan economy because over 50% of our economy, of our private sector is informal. How do you talk about profit? How do you talk about the planet to someone who's making bricks in a wetland? How do you talk about profit to that guy who's got his fish farm and is probably has got a lot of stagnant water, mosquitoes, causing some pollution to the environment? How do you talk about profit to a school that needs to burn firewood for porridge, for lunch, for dinner, in order to feed the pupils? We have to strike a balance. We have to find alternative viable solutions for these private sector players, especially in the informal sector. We have some initiatives at Private Sector Foundation with the World Bank, for example, the Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Program, the Skills Development Fund project, where we have had to train the private sector, especially those who have benefited from the grants that we were offering to the private sector. But the standards were non-negotiable. They had to meet environmental, social inclusivity, and governance principles that the World Bank has spelled out. We have a project with the MasterCard Foundation, a lead firm structure where we've partnered with 39 private sector players to create employment, and our target is 300,000 jobs. The challenge we're facing, because this is a completely social inclusivity agenda where 70% of the youth must be female. You go up country to, an old man in the village and tell him, hey, we want to give your daughter a job, and he's saying, but my son is the heir. How can you leave my son at home? And we have to take the son along in order for us to hire the female. And that is an interesting conversation around inclusivity. The gatekeepers are men, but we're trying to create jobs for women. and we will deliver the target. So far, we've created 44,000 jobs and have many more to go. But as we have a youthful population that Ms. Namondo talked about, with an average age of 16 years, 70% of our population is under 35 years. We're churning out 1.5 million youths into the employment tier every year. There's likely to be pressure on resources, inevitably, but also there are risks that come with vulnerability. All our youth are looking for jobs desperately. How do we ensure that we protect the youth so that people do not take advantage of them? And this is where we are implementing safeguarding measures. We're making sure as we create employment, all the youth that we are creating jobs for or actually have an access to a call line where they can escalate issues in case someone tries to take advantage of them. With the UNDP, we are working closely with government, particularly Ministry of Trade, to create awareness of green growth, of the green growth development strategy that's being rolled out by the government, and preserving the environment through tree planting, especially in the mining communities. We have worked with 35 mining communities in Kasese, in Kitgum, in Tororo. But I think the best part of this is actually, the initial job was to create awareness about gender-based violence. I am happy to say that actually I have 2 badges, one for the SDG that I got today, but the other one is the 16 days campaign that we are running internally at PSFU to create awareness about gender-based violence at the workplace. We are working with the EU on improving efficiencies of energy utilization amongst SMEs. And I think the best part with this, with the skills and governance program is that we've also created a corruption report facility where if you're trying to look for, if you're applying for a job within the government, submitting a tender, you can actually escalate issues to this corruption report facility. Why are we doing this? Because it was one of the barriers that the business community flagged when we asked them why Ugandans do not apply for government jobs. Their biggest issue was corruption. So we have interventions in place to address that. Now, in terms of governance, all development partners demand tax compliance. They have zero tolerance for corruption or fraud. I think it's my colleague at NSSF who was saying we're doing some of these things, and sometimes we forget that we're actually living the sustainability agenda. But the question is, are we doing enough? And it's clearly no. So in terms of our strategy, we've actually highlighted that in terms of our vision, we want to create a sustainable and inclusive private sector. And our mission is to catalyze business growth and competitiveness for inclusive wealth creation. All the words that we want to hear are in there. But what are we doing about it? We are building, we want to, I think there was a question about mindset shift. And it's the Right Honourable that mentioned that it's not a one-man job. I think that's very true. It's not government, it's not private sector. All of us have to live this. We need to integrate this sustainability into our way of life. In schools, in the school curriculum, we need to take it further to churches, through the religious leaders at the parish model, in the family unit. So I would say, in conclusion, we are creating awareness and sensitization. We've engaged the banking community and the insurance community to actually come up with green products for the private sector. And we are willing, and we have development partners who are willing to fund these initiatives. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Grace. And I mean, this is an interesting topic. If we had the whole day, we'll discuss all day through, but because of time and we lost some time at the beginning, we shall try to be brief. Now, over to you, my namesake here, Andrew. And within maybe 2 to 3 minutes, can we talk about UBL? UBL has taken a proactive approach to sustainability which blends with your CSR in unique ways. what key lessons are to be taken from your experience, especially in the areas of supporting local supply chain and labor force?
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and thank you to the Secretariat for the privilege of sitting in front of this audience. For context, I lead a business, Uganda Breweries Limited, which manufactures, distributes adult beverages. And we tend to be the branch of a lot of jokes, like my namesake started with. And I want to just wrap my conversation to see how our role in society is at the core of what we do. At Uganda Breweries Limited, our purpose as a business is to celebrate life every day and everywhere. No better place to work, where you go to work in order to make sure everybody is celebrating life every day and everywhere. And we have wrapped this purpose into all that we do.
Sorry, namesake. Maybe we shall hold the mic that our listeners can hear us.
Is this better?
It's more sustainable.
So I was talking about celebrating life every day, everywhere. And in the context of today's conversation, to bring up the sustainability strategy that we have forged for our business that is in line with our purpose. And we call it Society 2030, the spirit of progress. It has a simple three-pronged strategy, or three pillars that we focus on. And the pillars are grain to glass sustainability, we have inclusion and diversity, and we have positive drinking and moderation, for your interest. Three pillars: positive drinking and moderation, inclusion and diversity, and grain to glass sustainability. Now we're talking about how we incorporate our strategy, our business strategy, with CSR activities. So we don't hive off our CSR activities. So for illustration, and I'll just pick a few examples, on our grain to glass sustainability agenda, we start with, of course, the farmers. We are currently working with about 30,000 farmers across Uganda. So when we are looking at CSR activities that support that area, the CSR function, the CR function, is looking to build partnerships with the relevant bodies. So we have a very strong partnership with the NARO, the National Agricultural Research Organization, UNBS, where we're working to identify the right seed to be able to provide our farmers the right fertilizer, to be able to grow the crops, and also to interest the farming community by organizing them through our agronomists and our extension services we put in place, to be interested in handling and growing grains that previously they might not have. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in the Kigezi region in the south of Uganda, where I saw farmers with their first crop of barley in the field, with the agronomists there having received seed and support on fertilizer from us. And they were now looking forward to their first harvest of their cash crop. And these are small farmers, 1-2 acres shared with, between a few people. And their optimism about getting a new source of income was palpable. And again, that also speaks to the government NDP3 agenda, where we believe we have a role to play in monetizing agriculture down to the grassroots.
Okay.
So we are connected. Our purpose is connected to that, and we believe that through our grain to glass agenda, we are able to bring to life our purpose of celebrating life every day, everywhere.
Oh, thank you, namesake. Grain to glass and sustainable drinking. Some of the key highlights from my namesake here. I think I'm going to go to Gerard. Gerard, a banker like myself from NCBA. Gerard, by benchmarking from various organizations, how can Ugandan organizations craft credible and transparent sustainable goals and align their internal stakeholders to drive impactful decisions? If we can do this within 2 minutes, Gerard.
Thank you, Andrew. and good morning, everyone present here this morning. First of all, I would like to bring apologies from the MD of NCBA, Mark. He's not able to be here due to another engagement. So since I have 2 minutes, but I'll request maybe for 4.
Let's target 2, then we may end up in 4.
Okay, thank you. I think benchmarking is a very interesting topic, but as we benchmark, it's always important you understand your company purpose. And when I look at company purpose, it's normally the bold affirmation of why a company is trading, why the company is in business. And also, it really clarifies the business of the company and the purpose for the stakeholders. So, when we're in the boardroom thinking about strategy, somebody mentioned that indirectly we have sustainability in there, we talk about CSR, but we are not bold to come up with specific goals aimed at sustainability and ESG. So, when I read this topic that I'm discussing, and it's talking about credible, transparent, and sustainable goals, that changes everything. What does that mean? It really means we have to draft strategies that actually give a reason that you exist as a company that is beyond making money. And I'll just define this in 2 words. It's the intrinsic existence of a company. The reason you exist beyond just making money. And that's what speaks to sustainability and ESG. Now, how do we align the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders of a company? We have the shareholders, who are the owners. We have the board, we have management, and we have the other employees. So everyone in the company needs to be aligned to the ESG issues and the sustainability issues that we are facing currently. I think Mr. Stephen Mukasa at the start said sustainability is simple. Taking care of the needs of today without compromising those coming after us. Those are very, very important words as we actually unpack this topic. So how do we align this? One, you have to have an environment within which you allow everyone in the organization to freely talk about sustainability and ESG. I'll tell you at NCBA, as we try to underwrite corporate credit, it is increasingly becoming a mandate to talk about ESG. And that determines whether you advance that credit or not. So we are being mindful. If you're doing a business that is going to hurt the environment, it's going to hurt the social well-being of society, then we are sorry, we don't deal with you. So it's really how you cascade the mandate, and that has to come right from the owners to the board, to executive management, and then cascade it straight to all the employees.
Okay.
I think the other one, since I'm being just off the mic, I think education is important. You talked about the sustainability center. That is going to be very, very good as we try to enhance education of especially all stakeholders on the value that ESG brings. Some people don't know that actually ESG contributes to business growth. It contributes to improving the brand of a company. It contributes to credibility and actually to profitability of an organization. So I think that sustainability center, NCBA will be probably one of the first members to sign to it and see how everyone across the organization can be able to benefit. I think another one, Andrew, 1 minute. I think there's also a need to have, sometimes the way we operate, Ugandans like operating with incentives. Anything that is not incentivized, they usually don't take it serious. So if we create incentives for implementing sustainability strategies, just to drive ownership and responsiveness, I think this is one way we can actually go ahead and align ourselves with sustainability and ESG. In the interest of time, allow me to stop there. But otherwise, I had like 3 other points I needed to talk about. But I
thank you so much, Gerard. And I think, Stephen, I think we need to have more sessions like these ones even before we get to the next year. given that we've lost time, we have 7 years to go, so I think we shall have Gerard again here. Last but not least, and I did this deliberately because this is our technical person from the government, and that's Dr. Albert. Dr. Albert is my friend. We meet at times when we are supporting my namesake here in some places. So, Albert, from where you're seated, I mean, business are the architects and builders of sustainable development and social implementation to achieve the targets of the SDGs. How can the various stakeholders benefit from investing in the partnership for sustainable development? I can't give you 2 minutes. We can do 3 or 4.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, of course. And dear listeners, we usually meet Andrew, of course, in the Rotary. And that's where we do all those things. And of course, the aim of Rotary is to serve humanity, which is in line with sustainable development. We are Mujisha Albert, working at the Office of the Prime Minister as the head of the Sustainable Goals Secretariat. As noted from the guest of honor, the minister who has just spoken to you, she's the focal point minister for Sustainable Development Goals. And again, we are happy that the resident coordinator, who also talked this morning, is part of the group in this country that are supporting the implementation of SDGs on behalf of the UN agencies. When the government adopted the SDGs in 2015, by that time Uganda was the front runner. Uganda held the presidency of the United Nations.
Albert, if you could speak up, I think the volume is low. Thank you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
When the SDGs were adopted in 2015, government of Uganda held the presidency of the United Nations, and therefore we say we are the front runner. And when that happened, immediately the government developed a coordination framework with 2 approaches. The first approach was using the whole of government approach, and the second one is stakeholder approach. With the government approach, here dividing it into 2 categories. The first one political and the second one technical. And for the stakeholders, of course, we have very many institutions who are responsible for monitoring and implementing SDGs. And of those, we have UN agencies, we have development partners, we have CSOs, we have the private sector, the youth, academia, etc. Now, for the case of today, we are talking of the private sector. So you are part and parcel of the group that is supposed to be implementing SDGs in supporting government programs. And as we heard from the minister and the resident coordinator, we developed a platform called the SDG platform, which is supposed to be a medium platform for bringing together all different private sector companies, groups, different people in that particular area to discuss issues to do with SDGs. And I'm happy that the CEO Summit picked that one and came to the Secretariat, and we have been working very closely to make sure that they bring on the board all of the private sector so that we can implement and achieve the SDGs. Government cannot do it alone, it must do it with other people. But I am happy that with the CEOs who are here, even those few people who have talked about, you have heard from NSSF, that they have been supporting different programs, education and other youth, and already targeting 132,000 youth to be employed. Now, private sector foundation is talking of targeting 300,000, and I know many others are targeting many youth to be skillful and then get jobs, which is a prerequisite for government. And if that is done, then we should be able to achieve the SDGs. But we are remaining with 7 years, and we need to do mapping and find out which CEOs under your summit are supporting real SDGs and what SDGs are being supported. We need to document that. And then afterwards, we should be having a dialogue with the CEOs since now we have a secretariat which coordinates all the SDG implementation in Uganda, making sure that all the stakeholders are involved in the presentation. So I think after this one here, we should make sure that we have periodic meetings so that we can see who is supporting who and what and how that person or that company can be strengthened. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Doctor. And really excited to have the government partnering with the private sector for us to see ourselves move and achieve by 2030. So within the next 2-3 minutes, I've been given this mic here in case there are any questions to our panelists here. Any questions that we have from the audience? Doctor can answer any question, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Maybe I start since I'm sitting in front to talk to the audience. Kwesaka Robert is my name. I come from the Red Cross. Thank you very much, our panelists and the previous presenters. I want to emphasize one thing that has come out in the presentations by both the panelists and the presenters, but and I think the private sector needs to pick it and run with it. If we talk of sustainability without addressing the root causes that can impact negative on sustainability, then how are we going to repackage the partnerships between the private sector and the humanitarian sector? And here we are talking of not always waiting for things to go wrong, because then it erodes all the investment you have made. So if you have made investments in Kasese, in Mount Elgon, I can go on and on. And then you haven't worked towards how those investments are going to be sustained, whether your clients, whether those beneficiaries of these different tools you have rolled out. And so in the humanitarian sector, we are talking of what we call investing in early action, not waiting for response. And this early action be packaged around what we call shared values. And these are the shared values I'm talking about, that you invest in early action to make sure that it doesn't go wrong. And when it doesn't go wrong, your investment is safe, but you have been in partnership with the humanitarian world in mitigating that. And so I know we have had discussions with some of your institutions or corporates. I think this needs to be hyped and scaled up, that the investment you can do in early action, which is basically making sure it doesn't happen, even when one can say, yeah, but it's expensive, but it is 10 times more expensive to respond. But even the beauty of early action is it becomes sustainable investment. Even if it doesn't happen, one can say, yeah, but the emergency will not happen. Very good, it doesn't happen, and that investment is safe. So, Mr. Chairman, I thought I should bring this up, and hopefully in the course of today and the subsequent engagements, we see how this can be repositioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know, it's more of a supplement. I don't know if you, Doctor, you have any.
It's very right. It is an area we should be discussing. Of course, as a government, we have a risk management plan, which was launched recently, and it has all those actions which we need to take action with. But we need to discuss it. It's very important.
Thank you, Doctor. Any other question in the interest of time? Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm called Musingu Zlaban Joshua. I'm the president of the Youth Coalition for SDGs. It's a coalition of youth-led organizations and the guidance and mentorship of the National SDG Secretariat and the UN RCO's office. We have very many CEOs here and very many private sector companies. We have seen and realized that they have all come up with very many youth programs. So our concern as youth is that we are 75% of the population. How about also you private sector people come together and create this one program or major program for us, because you're breaking us down. NSSF has something, then you hear PSFU has something. So we end up not measuring the impact, and you can't see our contribution. So as government has done it through the SDG Secretariat, how about you also as private sector? Come up with something big for us. And I can assure you, some of us, the youth who are leading sustainable development, are in position to rally all the youth you need, and we can create impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, the youth. Maybe next time we shall have panels with the youth to represent. This one I'm going to, any comment from my namesake here? I know you work with a lot of people down there. Do you want to comment on that, Andrew?
I think we also need to celebrate the initiatives coming from the various sectors, because we are all doing different things, and we are trying to build the economy in very many different facets. And where there is a commitment, as guided by the SDG goals, to address job opportunities as well as the environment, governance, and the society at large, I think we need more players to find and forge their way. And within that, we cannot do, we're 75% of the population, we cannot do it without the youth. But I think we also want to allow the youth to find their niche and find their partners and to grow their future with their choice of partner. That would be my view. You have
they have formed a coalition. He is the president, and we have given them an office at the secretariat. They are organized. Now this is a time, actually, if you want to support them, come up and see how you can support them through the secretariat. And this is the venue that you can use so that that can work. We are here, you are all here, so what do we need to do? How do we handle it?
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. In the interest of time, allow me, please. I'll just, sustainability, we're talking about youth and women now. Let's go to one lady. If you allow me, the next questions, can we say, I don't know, Tony, do you have a link where these questions can be sent at least we have responses? Yeah, I think we're going to share something where all these questions can be put together and then we have responses. For now, allow me to have a lady, in the interest of sustainability,
No, thank you very much, and really thanks to all the panelists. I just wanted to add my small voice to the comment that came up from our colleague on the youth. But I think this speaks to that, the point I was making earlier in terms of measuring impact. Clearly, there are a number of institutions, businesses, etc., who are deliberately trying to support youth. But the question is, what's that adding up to? Do we know? There was some figure that came out from UBUS, and I don't know if it's true because it's been queried, that 700,000 young people enter the job market every year. If that indeed is true, well, these different initiatives, what we heard from NSSF, what we know is happening with our colleague who does adult beverages, and all the others in the room, well, how many are we reaching? And with what specifically? What's the package we're reaching them with? So the issue of monitoring really is important because we need to be able to say, as a community, the private sector, in addition, is reaching 450,000 a year. Yeah, so I think for that point, really, it's the monitoring. And for that, we need that space. And Dr. Albert has talked about how government is trying to revitalize that. But we need that space where we all come together and it is clear who is doing what vis-a-vis what goal and how we're tracking progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And With that, kindly allow me to close the session. Thank you so much, our panelists. Let's give them a big applause. And over to you, Tony. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrew Cavera. A very good timekeeper. Andrew Cavera, and of course the panelists, Dr. Albert Biamugisha and Andrew Kilonzo, Grace Gwaku, and Gerald. Thank you very much. We're now going into the next part of, or a continuation of our program, and here we'll be getting into the topic of the big ESG idea, driving an agenda for corporate sustainability leaders. This will be presented by Reshma Shah, and Reshma is the Group Director, Sustainability Equity Group Holdings. Reshma has over 20 years experience on a broad and rare combination of expertise spanning business strategy, performance risk, risk management, finance, tax, and sustainability. In the last 15 years, her work has focused on the extractive sector and infrastructure sector, primarily in Africa and the Middle East. Reshma.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. So the brief I was given today is to talk about the big agenda item, driving an agenda for corporate sustainability leaders, and also to give an overlay in terms of what we're doing at Equity Bank. So I'll try and give this justice in the time that I have. Please note this, I'm very passionate about this subject, so the timekeeper will keep me whole, I'm sure about that. But there's some slides that I was hoping could go up. We got them up. Excellent. Is there like a pointer? Okay, maybe someone can just help me, navigate the slides. So if we can move to the first slide, then. We've talked a lot today about the fact that we need to incorporate sustainability. We've talked a lot today about the fact it's about, the 3 Ps. It's about profits, it's about planet, it's about people. But I always find that in a lot of the discussions that I have, when you're talking to businesses, they understand all that, but then they say, what is it and why? Why should I do this? What's in it for me? And so I try to break it down into what is in it for you, because if I can get to that answer, then I'm more likely to get to them in terms of what they can create value with. And what we've got up on the slide there is just a bit of a reflection in terms of what could it mean for businesses. And I keep saying to businesses, you ascertain for yourself what it means for you. What is driving this? It could be, it's your purpose, it's your vision. That's what's driving it. It could be elements of, the law requires me to do it, so I have to do it. It could be risk management. When you think about the banking sector, if there's an environmental or social risk on one of our clients, if they have to pay huge fines, if it affects their profitability, it affects their reputation, it's going to affect us as well. They're going to not be able to pay the debts, it's going to affect our reputation. So that's pure risk management. It could be element like you have donor funding, or you have DFI funding, or international investors, and they demand this of you. Yesterday, I was sitting on a call with a rating agency that was looking at equity in terms of some of its international pension funds and family offices. And we were discussing ESG and their rating for that. It could be commercial impact to your business. Underlying, it could be a value chain derivative, global value supply chain. We've seen what COVID's done. We've seen what the Russia-Ukraine war has done. There's fundamental things on sustainability there that we can address. Some of the other, resource scarcity. We all know the issues around land. We all know the issues around water. Those are all resources that can fundamentally affect our businesses. Strategic positioning. You might want to position yourself as a sustainable business because that's what your market demands, or that's what your customers demand, or that's what your employees demand. So it's strategic positioning. Other thing is, this is how I want to be seen. This is my brand. This is my reputation. So I always ask, and if we could just maybe move to the next slide, is really, when we talk about compliance, risk, and value, On the next slide, I have a very simple model that I have adopted from Simon Sinek, which I really like. And he talks about businesses understanding the why they're in business. And I take that one step further and say, why is sustainability important to you? And you can really look at that why. Sustainability is very big. The areas that not every business can cover every single aspect of it. We heard today, adopt one SDG, maybe adopt more than one SDG. But really understand, if you understand the why, you can understand as a leader where you can make the biggest impact. And that, once you understand that, defines the how. Many of us can get to the what. That's practical, that's implementation. But the how defines how you embed it in your strategy, how it's governed in your governance structure, who you bring on board, who are your strategic partners. All that could be the competitive advantages that businesses are looking for when it comes to sustainability. So I would say here for leaders, really look at why. Really ask that question. Don't just say, I have to do it. Drill deeper into the why. You will find a legitimate answer. It doesn't matter what sector you're in. It doesn't matter the size of your business. I have done this with very small SMEs as well. And they could see how the why derived value for them. So this is a bit of the why. Now I want to show how we apply it at Equity. So if we go to the next slide, this is a collage of all the things that we're doing at Equity when it comes to sustainability. The very first top line, it's in our philosophies. Our philosophy is about lives and livelihood and improving lives and livelihood. So if you know anything about Equity, you'll know the sustainability story is particularly focused on the S side, on the social side, on the people, on getting them into financial inclusivity. But then how do you bring them into financial inclusivity? So elements of education come into it. Elements of entrepreneurship come into it. But then we're a bank. What are we seeing in terms of people not paying back? Because they're not healthy, or some of their relatives are not healthy, and they have to divert funds that way. So we bring health into it. We also work with refugees, so we bring social protection. We're one of the very few banks that actually provide funding and loans to refugees because we have managed to de-risk them. Then it's like, okay, people are not living in isolation, people are living in the environment. So environment is a key part of what we need to do. So the environment comes into our philosophy as well. Governance. We have a group board sustainability committee now that's looked at the board level. This was set up this year. And so at the board level, we have to look at the risk side, but also the opportunity side. They look at the resourcing, the capabilities. We build the capacity of the board as well. The Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan is our strategy. It's our strategy that we rolled out that's now been adopted by the ESC, Commonwealth, a number of UN agencies, a number of DFIs. It's based on 6 pillars, and it's all about catalyzing Africa's natural resources for own industrialization. One of those 6 pillars is Pillar 5, which is social and environmental transformation, which is all about sustainability. It's about development underpinned by sustainability. So it's part of our strategy. Our business model, you can see there, is a twin engine business model. We have a foundation that is not based on CSR. The foundation is primarily based about meeting our philosophy. It's the de-risking arm that we use, then the commercial arm comes in and is able to provide the funding. So we work side by side. So our business model is based around sustainability and then the commercial element. The team. We are now building a sustainability team. But what we don't want is to build an army of a sustainability team. What we really want to do is have a strong team, but embed sustainability in the business. So all our training is not just given to the sustainability team. It's given to our relationship managers. It's given to our branch regional managers. It's given to our credit analysts at the branch level. Risk management. A key part of our credit process is an environmental and social due diligence, which now includes climate-related risk. It's part of our policy. It's part of our procedure as well. We are actively driving sustainable finance as part of our loan portfolio. We have KPIs on what we need to do on that. And then we also have issued now our sustainability report, the first one for 2021. And we spend a lot of time engaging with our stakeholders, whether these are our employees, whether these are our clients, whether these are the investors that we work with. As part of the Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan, we're working with a number of international organizations where we want to bring them into the region. We've just led the Uganda-Vietnam trade mission. We've done a number with the DRC. So all of these are part of our sustainability story, and I hope you can see there that we've started at the very top in terms of our vision, and we've embedded it from the governance all the way to our process and procedures. Comes back to what I started with, the why. You know, we understood the why for us is lives and livelihood. So everything we're doing after that is around lives and livelihood. But just to leave with a kind of what is the impact of all of this. In terms of impact, you know, we've trained about 390,000 MSMEs on entrepreneurship. We've given out, in terms of social protection to the refugee community, 4.4 million people have been impacted by that. 2.4 million farmers, a majority of these being smallholder farmers, being impacted in terms of training, in terms of climate smart agri, in terms of financing. We've grown about 21.1 million trees. We have a target of growing 35 million trees. We're also preserving trees by moving away from wood-fired technology into we're using LPG, which might not be seen as the cleanest, but we have actually agreed that is cleaner and therefore eligible. About 364,000 clean devices given to domestic households. This is cooking, lighting, etc. And we have 66 Equity Afya clinics, health clinics, which have given access to over 1.2 million patients affordable healthcare. This is all embedded within the twin engine model. If I give Equity Afya as an example, it is run by the foundation as a franchise, but the people who are running it are people who have gone through our scholarship program, have gone through our entrepreneurship program. We went out there, we identified a health issue, we looked at who had gone through our program, we found the doctors, we put them through a business entrepreneurship training to make them business people. We then gave them the franchise to run with the condition of pricing so that it's affordable, and now we're now rolling that out. So that's an example of social and commercial working side by side. So I'll leave it at that. I hope I've reached out to the leaders in the room to really find your why, because that's the only way you can make it sustainable within your businesses. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Rashmi. That's a very interesting one. The why, because it's very interesting when you understand the concept of the why from Simon Sinek. Every organization on the planet knows what they do. These are products they sell or the services. And then the how. Some organizations know how they do it. These are the things that make them special or set them apart from their competition. But the why, very few organizations know why they do what they do. Why is not about making money. Why is not really about making money. That's a result. Why is a purpose, cause, or belief, and it's the very reason your organization exists. So thank you so much for that. It's very interesting, and I think it's one of the things that we should take away today, if anything, we should take away from this conversation. We're now moving on to the next presentation, which will be one of our final presentations, and this is on the future of the corporate sector, investing in environmental and social governance to improve long-term outcomes. And this will be done by Alison Kwekiriza. And Alison, just 1 second. technology. Okay, I seem not to have Alison's profile, but Alison works with, she's a corporate secretary at the Uganda Securities Exchange, and I guess this will support me in really explaining who she is. And she will be presenting, like I mentioned before, the future of the corporate sector, investing in ESG to improve companies. Alison.
Thank you, Tony. Allow me to observe protocol as the previous speakers. My name is Alison Kuchiriza Seruchacha, and I am the Chief Legal Counsel at the Stock Exchange. A good morning to you all. As the Exchange, we are excited to be part of the 13th CEO Summit. And I'd like to congratulate the team, the CEO Summit team, for launching the Sustainable Center. Congratulations. It's a significant milestone, and as the Exchange, we are honored to be a part of this significant event. Challenge with speaking towards the tail end of events such as this, you find that a lot of what you had planned to say has already been well articulated by the previous speakers. So as I was walking up, I was of two minds, either to reach here and say, I have nothing further useful to add, or to whisper to Tony to allow me move a vote of thanks. But I looked at the program and realized there's someone already allotted for that. So to the audience, I beg your indulgence as I try to navigate my submissions, hopefully trying not to sound repetitive because a lot of the discussion has really been ably articulated by a rich panel and by the previous speakers. But with that in mind, I'd like to share just 3 brief perspectives from the Stock Exchange, and specifically around ESG. I think the topic that I was asked to share on is around the future of the corporate sector, investing in environmental, social governance to improve long-term outcomes. First perspective, I think from the discussions that we've had, sustainability as a concept is really broad. And in terms of what some of the valid considerations that we'll probably ask ourselves from a capital markets, securities market perspective is what constitutes ESG and what does not constitute ESG. Because when we look at some of the themes, they are cross-cutting, and oftentimes you see the terms are interchangeably used, and with good reason, because you see that in terms of the pillars, environment, social aspects, those are cross-cutting. In terms of the strategic considerations, having those discussions incorporated at strategic level, having C-suite discussions, those are cross-cutting. In terms of shared goals, improving companies' business practices to boost performance and long-term growth, those are also shared, cross-cutting issues. The stakeholders are pretty much the same. So without belaboring the point, I think we've noted that in terms of as concepts, they do have a lot in common. But from a stock market perspective, I think we do note some subtle differences that I would like to share as my first perspective. First is in terms of ESG from a stakeholder perspective. We do notice that sustainability has a broad range of stakeholders. You have the customers, you talked about the employees, the community within which you operate. From where we're seated, we feel ESG focuses primarily on investors as key stakeholders. And the other subtle difference we note in terms of the two concepts used interchangeably is sustainability focuses on how the company or its investments impact the world. ESG, from where we're seated, on the other hand, focuses on how we utilize specific metrics to profile risks that are arising from those areas of environment, social, and governance, how this impacts the risk profile of a company, and how these non-financial parameters then speak to the sustainability of such an entity from an investment perspective. As subtle as it may appear, I think as an organization it's important to draw this distinction, because then you're able to clearly communicate, to effectively communicate to your stakeholders on your sustainability or ESG credentials, as the case may be, so that those specific credentials are able to create the value or articulate your potential or your opportunities, as the case may be. And this brings me to the second perspective. Talked about the stakeholders, investors, as a key stakeholder from an ESG perspective from the stock market. And when you're, as mentioned, with ESG, you're really focusing on the investor and how these non-financial parameters speak to the risk profile of a company or an asset from an investment standpoint, and consequently how this is measured and the extent to which then that company or financial asset is sustainable. Now, investors come in different categories. We had someone from NSSF, so we have the pension funds, we have the retail, high net worth individuals, all of who have different expectations and investment aspirations. So as an entity, you want to understand, or as an investor, sorry, you want to understand how an investment opportunity is unique, how it matches your personal motivations, and how it speaks to your return expectations. That is one dimension in terms of stakeholders. The other stakeholder that is probably most relevant for this discussion is around the investee, or the company in which an investor seeks to deploy their capital. Now, increasingly, we see that we're having ESG-linked financing. In equity, we've seen debt ESG-linked financing, and this is becoming the order of the day. You're having a lot of investors out there want to match their ESG preferences to the kind of financing that they're giving you, whether it be debt or whether it be equity. And just to give a snapshot of where we're at as a stock market, you'll find currently we have about 125,000 thereabout investors. 85% of these are Ugandans, both individuals and Ugandan companies. You have 2% that are foreign investors, both individuals and companies, and the remaining 13% is spread across East African companies and East African individuals. Now, what is interesting, though, is from a participation perspective, the table is turned. When you look at who accounts for market participation in terms of volumes and trading turnover, the 2%, which is the foreign investors, are contributing over 85% of the trading turnover and the trading volumes at the exchange. And the story is not much different when you compare, by and large, with our regional peers. I think another example I'll give is early this year, we did launch a specialist market. the specialist market, which we call USC EDALA. EDALA is the Luganda term for ladder. It's an unquoted securities platform where companies that do not meet the minimum criteria for listing on the public markets are given an opportunity to interact with potential capital providers, majorly professional investors, through placement of restricted offers and private placements. But as we met and discussed with these professional investors, I can tell you that 3 out of every 4 investors we met, most of who were foreign investors, they either raised an ESG concern or an ESG interest. And as one would say, what is the moral of the story here? I think we need to recognize where our sources of funding as a private sector are coming from. And we need to be cognizant that these sources of funding, the areas from which they emanate, are far off in the ESG conversation. And so, as you are planning for sustainability as an entity, it's important that from the get-go, you're incorporating some of these matrices, you're embedding them within your company's structure, within your strategy, because these are now being incorporated in valuation models. We're now seeing ESG-linked products, even short-term financing, green financing. I know IFC has been very active in this area. They're being more pronounced. It is said between 2018 and 2020, the green financing market doubled. This is from Bloomberg. Doubled, not doubled, actually tripled. It moved threefold to about 130 US billion. So I think what we're saying is that the landscape is evolving, and it's evolving fast. We have over 25 companies, countries globally that have adopted mandatory ESG reporting. And so as a business, you want to stay ahead of the curve. We have ever-evolving capital needs. Some are to do with implementing very ambitious strategic plans, but others are more around the regulatory environment. I mean, we've seen in the banking sector, in the insurance sector, capital adequacy requirements are being changed on the daily. So you need to be able to position yourself to to be a part of the opportunities that ESG offers from a capital perspective. And really to say that, as I'd mentioned, we're now seeing ESG being incorporated in valuation matrices. So it's no longer a compliance issue. It's now a real business issue that needs to be considered by companies. For existing investors, you also want to think about, with the growing knowledge, you want to think about how you're meeting their reporting needs from an ESG perspective. How are you incorporating this in your integrated report? And so these are the conversations that are shaping the ESG investment attitudes in the market. And I think that would take me to my third and final perspective. I am compelled to highlight a few practical challenges. This is my sort of disclaimer in terms of implementation, and I'm glad the CEO Summit team is on ground so that we can thrash out how to deal with these challenges, some of which have already been mentioned. One of the significant hurdles we face is around data. We do not have comparable data, both from an entity perspective, looking historically inward, but also from a country, comparing country and country. So it becomes very difficult for those who want to start the journey, but it also puts us on a back foot, and I'm speaking from a country perspective. ESG as a framework is primarily driven by data. And so while some sectors have made headway compared to others, the available data is, it falls short in terms of providing the kind of comparable information that would historically profile and compare a company, compare a sector, compare country to country. I think someone mentioned Cambodia, and I forget the other country that is, sorry? Bangladesh? Yes, that is doing quite well. So it becomes a bit difficult for a country that is not there yet to compete effectively. And we are all competing for the same pool of capital. And I speak this not only from a corporate perspective, but even from a government perspective. Government is seeking to raise funding. It's borrowing through the debt. So these are some of the considerations that we need to appraise ourselves of. I think, of course, the risk here is that it becomes subjective without data. It's primarily subjective. And I think in terms of governance, we've made significant strides, looking at the Companies Act, looking at how different companies have adopted the King 6 standards and the like. Significant progress there. I think where we really struggle for ESG is areas of environment and social aspects. We've seen this debate when it came in environment. I mean, we're discussing, there was a huge debate around the oil pipeline. Imagine how easier that debate would have been if we actually had an aligned ESG matrix that is able to identify and articulate these environment-related concerns ahead of the final investment decision, but also with the concerns coming up, matrix that people are actually comfortable to associate with in terms of allaying those fears around the environment. So those are some of the challenges. When it comes to social, again, we do anticipate some friction in assessing certain matrices, human rights, for example, as a metric, and a social impact. I think we've seen some practical, cultural, and social differences from regional and but also from a global setting. And so I think it would be important as we think about standardizing the matrices to really have a discussion on how we can align and tailor some of these parameters to suit our realities as a country, as a region. I do associate with comments from, I think it was the UN resident coordinator around the fragmented approach. It's important that we synergize for impact, and again, as we synergize for impact, find practical and intentional ways of measuring that impact. As the exchange, we'll be delighted to be a part of this conversation. We are part of the Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, and this initiative is really a global platform in collaboration with investors and issuers that seeks to enhance a performance on ESG and encourage sustainable investments, including financing sustainable development. We had already begun works around rolling out ESG guidelines. This is something in the pipeline that we hope to roll out before the end of next year. And we do hope it will add value to the investing community, but also be of value to businesses as they gradually learn how to adopt and utilize these ESG matrices. We are happy to find meaningful ways of collaborating with the Sustainable Center that has been launched today. And we do hope that not only listed companies, but even non-listed companies can borrow from these guidelines that we'll come up with so that they can improve their stakeholder reporting environment and the way they utilize their ESG. So for us, this conversation could not be more timely. I beg to stop here. I thank you for listening to me, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Alison. Another round of applause for Alison. Thank you very much. So we've come to the final presentation that will be made today, and this presentation will be focusing on concept to practice, how to get the sustainability agenda started. This will be presented by Kathy Adengo, who's the head of sustainability at Stanbic Bank, Uganda. Kathy is the head of sustainability at Stanbic Bank, Uganda, and she's responsible for the implementation of the bank's sustainability strategy and environmental, social, and governance priorities. Sustainability management plays a critical role to creating long-term business value by ensuring that the bank's operations and activities create shared prosperity, improve community well-being, and have a positive social and economic and environmental impact. With over 18 years' experience and a proven track record in corporate affairs, reputational management, CSR, and sustainable business, Kathy holds a wealth of experience in various sectors, including the oil and gas sector, having worked in investor relations for Talo Oil for 6 years in London, Ghana, Uganda, and other sectors including ICT, tobacco, advertising, and currently banking. Kathy holds a postgraduate in business sustainability from the University of Cambridge and a bachelor's degree in business management from the University of Kent, UK. Kathy Adengo.
I think it's appropriate to say good afternoon now. Hi, how's everybody doing? I know I'm the last, I'm going to make sure I do justice. So, great, it's such a pleasure to be up here speaking to you this afternoon. It's been a fantastic morning, and indeed, a lot has been covered on sustainability and ESG, but I think what's critical, which is what most corporate companies like to ask and understand, is how does this become practical? How does it turn into work? I'm often in different fora where people ask me, so what do you do on a day-to-day basis? How does this actually come into practice? And then what does that mean for your profitability, but at the same time making a positive impact in society? So what I'm going to take you through today, did the clicker fail? Or I'll keep saying next slide. Yeah? Okay, great. I'm going to touch on what developing a strategy is. Let's move to the next one. A sustainability strategy means for a corporate organization. Some of these could be experiences that even smaller businesses can take into consideration for developing their strategies, but I'll just give a bit of context of approach. So the first things first is it's important to understand that ESG is pretty much about the way you do business. It's about doing business the right way. You incorporate environmental considerations, economic considerations, or social impact considerations and governance ones into the way you build your strategy and build your plan. It's pretty much that. And where that comes into developing is that at times, and I'll use the reference of a large corporate company like ourselves, you might actually need support based on the fact that ESG and sustainability is fairly a new subject area for some of the companies operating locally. Internationally, I mean, it has gone far ahead, so which means that some frameworks have already been developed that are helping global organizations. Like we talked about Coca-Cola today, or Total, as you have seen in Total Energies. Their sustainability frameworks are kind of light years ahead of us. But when you're looking at developing one locally for the context of Uganda, the first things first is acknowledging that you might actually need sustainability strategists and consultants to help you in that journey. So that's the journey we also took. It took about 6 months for Stanbic Bank, but we got it all completed early this year in March. But it took a while, and I'll explain the journey of why. The most important thing we need to understand is that you need to know what it means for your business in the context of Uganda. You'd need to understand how it impacts the offering for your clients, for your employees, and all stakeholders around you. So the reason why the consultation for 6 months takes a while is you've got to understand who you're impacting and why it's relevant for you to change your business model to ensure that you're doing the right things from an ESG perspective. So that consultation process is something that's often misunderstood. I have seen friends and different companies who have actually just went and copied and pasted templates. That's not how it works. You actually have to listen to your customer, listen to your clients, listen to your employees, and understand where their issues are and be able to create a meaningful impact. So I'll quickly move on to the next one. I'm pleased to present to you Stanbic Bank's sustainability framework. Okay? This is a piece of work that I mentioned we've been spending 6 months on, but we have agreed on specific areas within our social, economic, and environmental impact, which align to our ESG priorities. and what we have vowed we will do in this nation to create a positive sustainability impact. So among the first things, just hold on. Can I use this? Because I kind of feel like I need some more. Is that all right? Testing? Fantastic. I can switch this off. Sorry, I was feeling inhibited. So there are a couple of things, and I'll just summarize really quickly. We have vowed to specifically create interventions through our activities in areas for social, and we're committed to 3 focus areas within the economic space because of our nature of our business. Of course, it would be different from manufacturers or a different type of company, but we're in the financial sector. We play a big role. We're the largest bank in the economy, so we need to make sure that we're having a great impact and a positive impact in this space, and I'll show you why and how. And then environmentally, which is the new piece of work which most people are seeing, and I'll be explaining to you a little bit in detail. But from a social impact perspective, when we agreed to what are we going to do from a sustainability perspective, which areas should we focus on that will actually turn the dial in Uganda? The first and most important one was education and youth empowerment. The reason we had to think about this is we keep thinking about the future, which is what sustainability is there to do. We need to think about the future generation. If almost 75% of your population is young, we can't be the bank that's not solving for them. We have to understand what are their needs. These are the future clients. These are the people who are going to make decisions in the future, build business in the future. How are we solving for them? On top of that, we know coupled with an education system that needs a lot of support, how do we tap into working with Ministry of Education to make the fundamental interventions that will change the dial? The biggest thing we did, for example, during, especially once schools were off for quite a while during COVID, we had to look at how to intervene to restart the education sector. We changed our model for lending for both private and public sector support to resuscitate the schools and get everyone up to speed on their operations within schools. Education is a very big piece of work that we have vowed to make sure that we're into. The healthcare sector, we had to understand what are the issues in healthcare and can we meaningfully make a difference. But we've found that the healthcare concerns are quite huge. And really, we want to save the world for everybody, but we can't. So we've zeroed in on specific areas we want to do, and one of them is maternal health. The death rate is quite alarming because 15 women actually die on a daily basis for things that are quite avoidable in hospitals. Some die along the way because they don't have access to facilities. We have to care about these kind of situations, and that's one area that Stanbic has vowed. Maternal health is going to be one of those. But that doesn't mean we don't finance private institutions who are looking, or hospitals, or even government that needs support or equipment, support in financing. We still do that. But we've just focused on one specific area, which is maternal health, so that we look at the future of mothers and babies. The last one on social impact is responsible business, because we hold your information. We hold your money. It is important for us to be responsible around that. So that's why we have vowed to ensure that we are very compliant to all your customer protection needs within what we do. From an economic perspective, Uganda is known, of course, as one of the most entrepreneurial in the world. But then if the SMEs are continuously setting up and failing within a year, or even less than, in fact, it's 3 years most of the time, but sometimes in less than a year, most of them are quite failing. And what we've said we want to do is focus on how can we support SME and enterprise growth and at the same time create jobs and promote job creation. And that's where our financing solutions for SMEs come in. And I just want to say for anyone for the record, because I've received this feedback quite a bit, most SMEs think they can't come to Stanbic because we're big and we're blue, and we ask for collateral. But that's not the case. We have remodeled our solutions to make sure SMEs can borrow. You don't need collateral anymore. I could brag about all our fantastic solutions for trade and anything for import, export. We do quite a lot of that, guarantees, etc. We have changed the way we're doing business, and we want to welcome SMEs in this country to come and get the financing they need, which is more affordable and flexible for them. The other piece of work we're doing for SMEs, and which is where my good friend Tony comes in, is that tied into this is that we have the Stanbic Business Incubator. This is a huge investment that we put in every year of close to 2 billion that helps us ensure that we're offering free capacity development for SMEs in Uganda. The reason this ties back to this overall objective is that if SMEs are struggling with the basics, which is running a business, some of them don't know how to tender. They've been coming to Tony saying, I want to tender for oil and gas contracts, I want to do big business, but the guy has no annual accounts. He actually doesn't even know how much he pays his employees. And some of them are very basic requirements, very basic things that they can be scaled up. And Tony is the guru who has changed a lot of businesses' lives. And we have quite a number, which is great, who come to us and say, thank you for training. And by the way, they don't have to be Stanbic clients. They can actually be anyone who walks into our offices and is interested in actually getting capacity development for their business. They can be a 5-man business or more. I think it can be as small as 5 people. And they get all the support they need from Stanbic. And what that has done for us is, of course, they walk into our door and ask for financing. So we're more happy to bank you because you're able to run a very profitable business. So we would be more willing to support them. So it all works and everybody wins. Financial inclusion is very key. We're doing this especially with digital solutions. Can I ask us around, just a quick one, have you heard of FlexiPay from Stanbic Bank? You have? Fantastic, good. I'm glad our posters are there. That's going to be very revolutionary for us because we're trying to reach the last mile. We're trying to reach the person in the communities. We're trying to find solutions that will reach that. Do I have 2 minutes? No, God. Okay, then. Let me run real quick. Infrastructure remains big and key for us. We're a systemic bank, but also a very big a role player in supporting government in its national development agenda. So things to do with transport, infrastructure development, power, we're involved, and we'll continue to support the government in this realm. Environment is really the new space, and which is where we've introduced, and actually Reshma, thank goodness all institutions are now introducing this, is the environmental social due diligence. So as financial institutions, this is very key for us because we need to assess the indirect impact that our financing is having on ESG matters in other clients. So it's very important that we introduce that. That's a new thing. Green solutions, of course, sustainable financing. So we're looking at promoting how we can finance green entities, small, big, whatever, anything that is in the green space, that's key. And then environmental partnerships. This is where we work with anybody who is interested in any climate action programs. For example, we're working with, actually we're good friends from UBL, Shell Vivo, Coke on Tasso Butonde, which is the environmental program. We're also running a couple with the Ministry of Water and Environment and running out of trees. But we want to encourage these partnerships because we believe we can win together. So just quickly moving on to the next one, just to show you how these initiatives come to life. When you talk about the practice of what's really going on, we employ 1,800 people, so it's great that these 1,800 people actually do all this work. But we do the women's proposition. Women empowerment is big for us. We actually have a value proposition. Healthcare sector, I mentioned. There's also a youth proposition that we're having in universities just to finance laptops because of our digital age. With youth empowerment is still big for us. We have a national schools program. It was actually endorsed by the First Lady earlier this year. Of course, we try to reach over 200,000 students. This one is really about mindset change. Maternal health I mentioned. The last slide, I think. Oh no, next one. Of course, we're involved in financing circles. Again, we're still very keen on financial inclusion, reaching the last mile. I've touched on the business incubator. We want to continue to deepen that financial inclusion using FlexiPay and other digital solutions. And lastly, recycling. I don't know if my friends from Coca-Cola are here. We're in partnership with them. We're going to start a recycling campaign. But then everyone else we're working with, like I mentioned, sustainable finance, and then embedding ESG best practice within our operations and standards and policies. This is actually what it looks like when you're actually doing it in practice and can apply to any of the other large corporates. Of course, this differs because we're a financial institution, but the principles are the same. So it's very critical for us to ensure that we understand that the process of developing a strategy is key. But when you're actually doing the implementation, make sure that you're looking for that meaningful impact and it's well thought out. So thank you very much, and I'm glad to have had this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you very much, Kathy. That now brings us to the end of our presentations today. And just before we close, we have a video that's going to be airing here. It's a video of Mr. Peter Kimbo. Are we ready, technical team? Ready? Good.
My name is Peter Chimboa, and I am chairman of National Social Security Fund, but I'm also a founding chairman of the CEO Summit. And I'm also a trustee of an organization being set up now and being launched by the Prime Minister soon, which is called the Sustainability Center. Sustainable development presupposes that there is significant and also long-term development and growth. Sustainable development presupposes that there is acceleration and consolidation and also expansion of gains in the business and industrial world. So there is sustainable development. There is value being created every day and all the time and everywhere. Now, ESG, which means environment, social and governance, infrastructure, E stands for environment. And what you might be aware of is that we are losing our biodiversity and environment. We are losing a number of species, and flora and fauna. We are besotted by challenges around pollution, climate change. So we have more floods, drought, and all those kind of things. There is pollution also that is occurring in the environment at an increasing rate. And increasing the temperature, daytime temperature is high. And as you are aware, when the temperatures are very high, we have more insects, strange insects, even viruses. And you can see there are so many now. So that's on the environmental side, degradation of the environmental ecosystem of the world. Now, S stands for social. And this is the well-being and engagement of people. So it's about people and how the people thrive, especially in this planet which we are destroying. So what are the social issues? Issues around stress, issues around well-being, really, and engagement. So that's social. And the issues around diversity, and also equity, and also inclusion, that we don't leave out certain people, but we make sure no one is left behind. Now, when it comes to governance, it's more about how we organize ourselves, the roles that we play to maintain loyalty and duty of care among the people. What are the policies that we put in place to make sure that we have got an organized way in which to create sustainable development? So there's transparency in communication. There's a lot of information available and data to everybody. That's governance. There's also a degree of etiquette and good manners, and also caring for each other, connecting with other people, and so on, especially using technology. So how do we drive humanity causes in a way that helps us to preserve the planet? How do we keep greed in check? There is a book which is called The End of Greed, or No Greed at All. There are two separate books. They are about the new world. The new world is about knowing that I need to bend backwards to accommodate other people so that together we can engage into broad value creation at all levels of social development, socio-economic development. So ESG is at the center of debate and discussion in the boardrooms, in the government, in the civil society. It is the most important subject today in the world because it's about planet preservation. We don't have planet B. We've got only one planet. And it's the planet that we are destroying. Yet, there is everything possible. There is everything conceivable in this world to satisfy every human being. But there isn't enough to satisfy every human being's greed. That's why we say greed is dead. Grow the agenda for the ESG in our organizations. Now, how do we grow it? Let's start with government. Government of Uganda from the word go has been very much involved, first of all, in the Millennium Development Goals of the UN, which were more also focused on how environment, how social issues and governance can support countries' development agendas. So that ended in 2015. And the United Nations Secretary General launched what he called the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the difference between the two is one of accelerating growth in a way that speaks of commitment and sustainable growth. And this is how it works. The Sustainable Development Goals, I would like to use a quick example, that before in the Millennium Development Goals, it was like a handshake. Now, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, it's an embrace. It's a relationship that works together for long term. And I will share with you what I've been sharing in the last few minutes. Human beings have not been completely selfish from the time go. No. Human beings have also been having a heart that I can make money and support other people. That was stage one, which we call philanthropy. And many organizations today are saying they are pursuing ESG, which they mistake for philanthropy. Philanthropy means what you are going to see, especially during this season, Christmas. You are going to see companies in the newspapers donating blankets to hospitals, donating buckets, donating boreholes, and so. That is supporting community. Okay? That is philanthropy. Other institutions have moved on to what we call corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is we as a company, we are making money, but we are going to reserve 1% of our profit to supporting you. Now, we can support you on anything, and so. So we are not really connected with you so much in our business. That is corporate social responsibility. It is short term, it is a handshake, and it's not in any way connected with our company strategy, budgeting, and planning process. No, you are still outside our organization. Sustainable development means that you are a partner. You are part and parcel of our planning, budgeting, and strategy. In other words, together, we are working towards broad value creation. You are part of our productivity ecosystem. Let me give you an example of a quick one of a flour mill in Kawempe. So you have got a flour mill in Kawempe. Now you could do three things. You could do philanthropy. That means you can donate some buckets to the people around Kawempe. That's philanthropy. Two, you can do corporate social responsibility. Like now at Christmas time, you can check on 1% of your profit and again give. But you could also do something else as a flour miller. You could say, guys who are around here, those of you who have a piece of land, I'm giving you better seeds, which are drought resistant. I'm going to give you solar pumps to irrigate your crops. I'm going to give you advance cash to grow your crops in a way that is smart, intercropping, and so on and whatever. And when your crop is ready, the maize, I'm the one who is going to buy it. Okay? Now, you can see clearly that the maize grower, the ordinary person, maize grower, whom you are going to give buckets and blankets, is now part of your productivity ecosystem in the flour mill. So, the maize he produces, you are going to buy. And when you work on the maize and you get flour, the flour is going to improve the food system around the place. Meanwhile, people are earning money sustainably because they have a ready buyer. You have linked production to productivity, to processing, and you are creating a new ecosystem. That is called sustainable development. That's sustainable. Why? Because whatever I'm doing as an individual is directly part and parcel of your production. So that is the reason why government of Uganda, civil society, business and industry in Uganda has come to the realization that for them to be profitable and to grow sustainably, no one has to be left behind. Each one of us must fit into the productivity ecosystem of each institution. So corporations now, leaders today, captains of business and industry, they produce an annual integrated report. The annual integrated report must show planet consciousness, must show what they are doing around ESG, the environment, because we have one planet. What are they doing with the people and planet? What are they doing with the way they govern themselves as human beings without selfishness, with the duty of care and loyalty? The CEO Summit, through the new institution called Sustainability Center, are launching what they call a sustainability leadership program, which is going to be pitched at different levels of society. And the curriculum is quite deep and wide. So the curriculum will address issues like mindset. How do you tell that this is philanthropy, this is corporate social responsibility, this is sustainability now, shared value, corporate purpose? So there's going to be a lot of training, awareness creation. There's going to be a lot of advice in business and industry, in government, and many other players within the economy of Uganda. To one, first of all, demystify what sustainable development is. Through training, through awareness creation, using a multimedia approach, and also leveraging on technology and building skills at different levels. And this will start. Uganda is on the way to that. It's a start, could be a slow start, but it's a start nonetheless.
Thank you very much, PK, in absentia, for that video. We'll now go to the final part of this day. And I'm glad we have managed to claw back time. We are trying, and we'll manage to finish this before 1 p.m., and I'm excited we've managed to claw back time. The person that's going to come and close this is someone who said I should just call him my friend. But unfortunately, unlike Andrew and Andrew here, who are talking about meeting in social events and all that stuff, I won't really say much about him in that area, but I'll try and demystify him professionally. So Paul Kavuma is the CEO of Jubilee Alliance General Insurance Company Limited. He holds a law degree from London and has an extensive experience in the insurance industry. He has worked in the insurance industry for over 24 years in both insurance and broking sides of the business. Prior to joining Jubilee Alliance Uganda in 2022, Paul was the Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Insurers Association since 2018. He's also worked with AIG Insurance and AON Insurance Brokers in Uganda for over 9 years. And before doing that, he was the Chief Operating Officer and later Deputy Managing Director of Gold Star Insurance. My friend, Paul Kavuma.
Possibly mine is the easiest job this afternoon, and I will start on a light note. The endorsement the minister gave this morning about Tony, we're going to have a hard time, some of us who know him socially. I think we're going to have difficult times in the evenings when we are, supporting Andrew. But well done, Tony. Thank you so much. Now the big thank yous. Firstly, I wish to recognize the trustees of the CEO Summit, the presence of Dr. Chibuka, very distinguished and honorable gentleman. Thank you so much for being a role model to some of us. The Master of Decorum, thank you. On behalf of your colleagues, we extend our appreciations. The Honorable Minister always has a light moment, and I think the choice of representative from government this morning was spot on. If it was the Prime Minister herself, we'd still have had a good time. But with Honorable Lumumba, we certainly did have a good time. And Tony, you take the credit. Allow me to also recognize Susan Ngugi. Super. For me, it would be for her to give us the scorecard of Uganda on the SDGs. And Dudu Nsomi, thank you very much. The quality of profit, that caught my eye. That was super. Thank you so much. The rest of the panelists, we are all local content, and thank you so much for your presentation. Stephen and the team at the Secretariat, super job. Thank you so much. And you, the sponsors. Now, the takeaways really, I will just close through over what I think were good takeaway points for us to look at. Good governance promotes good business. It is a culture that we need to inculcate in ourselves. We don't have a choice. And I am sure it is now creeping into regulation. Any of us who have regulators, I guess this is the road to go now. And for my colleagues in the financial sector, I can only say if you have good corporate governance, then you are bankable or you are insurable. It is now not just a board agenda item, it is the board. Governance is board itself. What I'm not sure of is the 3 Ps and in what order. Is it profit first or people, or is it the planet? But after listening to PK, Director PK, if I may, I think it is the planet. We ought to give the planet priority lately. Business onboarding lately requires that you go through an ESG. It is now a requirement. Diversity and equality are midstars, and I can say that at the moment, I think equality is tipping the balance towards the gender that we know. And everybody is intently and carefully looking at diversity. It's without doubt. The minister also mentioned that there's government support in terms of creating an enabling environment, which is good. We were lucky we got away, otherwise it is going to be part of regulation or law that if you're going to be licensed, that is where you have to go. But I think it would be a good thing. And also, this sort of promotion, if we get to listen to what Kathy said, Stanbic is a big bank, probably a good budget, as well as our friends at UBL. Sorry, I'm going to pick on the big boys in the room, the big taxpayers as well. This creates and requires a huge budget. But if we go cluster-wise, I'll borrow credence from the insurers. We have the Insurers Association. The bankers have the association. The engineers have an association. If we use these associations, I think we shall be in a better place to promote this. All the SDGs are important to us. They've been endorsed by government. Now the focus should be on the impact, and also we leverage on how far we have come in terms of progress. I think, Stephen, you have your agenda cut out for the next CEO forum, whereby we shall be leveraging on how far we've come. Because I want to say that the theme was very carefully sought, couched, and very appropriate for us now. Again, sorry, I'm going to pick on one or two. Again, UBL, Andrew, probably you have the best job in town. You keep everybody happy. And listening to you this morning, and your model, really, if we get these sort of speakers every so often, I think this agenda will be promoted and everybody will come on board. Lastly, the beliefs, the thoughts as expounded by our sister, the values, the identity. Ultimately, this creates a good and decent living for everybody, because ultimately that's what we're all about. Sustainability is risk, and if you don't talk about risk, I'll be very selfish to stand here before you and not tell you that we are part of the risk managers with my big brother out there, Mr. Solomon Ngondo, for recognition. If you are going to sustain your business, you certainly need risk management. And risk management is not only in books, risk management is in theory, it's practical, and there's no safer place to go like an insurance company. Lastly, allow me to say and ask you for a thunderous round of applause to everybody here. I will go back to you, Stephen, and the board of trustees at the CEO Summit for creating the CEO Sustainability Center. Certainly, we wish that you promote it, we make good use of it, because now we know that on all our board submissions, this is part of what it should be. So we ought to be giving quality reports to our boards, and I can assure you once we partake and subscribe to this, we'll be good to go. And of course, the Sustainability Leadership Program has been ongoing. I know some of us probably went through it, and in the capable hands of the summit, we've tried to come this far, and want to applaud the CEO Summit for that. We again want to thank the sponsors this evening, this morning, for this arousing and very, very engaging workshop. Like I said, the theme was very couched, it was very appropriate, and it gives us a lot of lessons to learn. Allow me to give you best wishes and a good start to the festive seasons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, and I think that brings us to the end of this very interesting day. I must also say that we've been live on Smart Television, SMART24 TV, and for those of you who are interested in business news, and I believe all CEOs should be interested in business news, you can check that out on 394, that's on GoTV, and 372, that's DSTV. But as I conclude, I also just wanted to say, while we walk away and think about sustainability, it's also about thinking about the project triangle. And in the project triangle, it's very interesting because you will see three things that are important: good, cheap, and fast. Now, you're only supposed to choose two. So if you choose fast and good, that means it's expensive because you'll have to invest in that. But if you choose good and cheap, that means it will be slow and not to the quality that you want. And again, if you choose fast and cheap, it will be substandard. So as we think about these things, let's go back to the why. Why are we doing the things that we do? So good morning, good afternoon, and I wish you the best of your day. Good afternoon.
Part of this particular one, as it has been happening at the 13th edition CEO Forum that has been happening at Mestil Hotel in Zambia. Well, pretty much if I'm to break down for you a little bit of this particular one, is that the Right Honorable Justin Lumumba, who was the chief guest of the event, did call upon the CEOs in the agriculture, manufacturing, ICT services, oil and gas, sports and creative industry to align the organization policies to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and she challenged all the CEOs to align their finances and services in order to deliver for both profit and sustainable development as well. Now, also on the other hand, as the UN coordinator in Uganda, Ms. Susan Ngonji Namondo, did say that there's room to maximize the potential of the private sector in actualizing the strategies and the plans in place in order not to disappoint the stakeholders, mainly if we are to look at that situation. And of course, this is the annual edition of the CEO Summit, and this particular edition of 2022 has been the 13th of the same kind, if we are to look at that. Now on our live, we switch our eyes to Kabira Country Club. Here, there is an ongoing fresh fruits and vegetables sector meeting that is actually heading on. And among the key things that are definitely being discussed here is improving trade facilitation for different stakeholders within the agriculture sector, mainly those based in fresh fruits and vegetables. And then also just to break down a little bit for you, so among the other discussions regarding handling of fresh fruits and vegetable consignments at Entebbe International Airport. Those are some of the key discussions happening at the Kabira Country Club. Let's have more of that now.
Can be given on a case-by-case basis, because we have concessions that are extended to those who are into the agricultural sector, which may not necessarily apply to, for example, the gold miners. So without further ado, I would kindly request